ratepayer fees, of which every community contributes. So the thought process is that any improvements in stormwater quality or benefits accrued would then be assigned on a prorated basis to each of the member or funding communities, rather than the community in which the geographic improvement occurs.
And do we currently have a number that we need to get to for TMDL, or is it coming soon?
We have a draft number.
Oh, we do, okay.
Yeah. This won't get us there, but I think we've had that discussion prior during the Wilson Drive planning when Sweetwater Executive Director was here. Our goal is to step toward compliance. Just given the constraints in the box that we're working in, achieving compliance will be difficult and it will take a tremendous amount of resources, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't use every opportunity to step in that direction. And this would be a great opportunity.
Okay, thanks.
And I'd just like to add too that I did talk with the MSD director, and I think his phrase was every drop counts. And so it really made an impact on me that whatever we can do, even if it's a drop, we should be doing. Trustee Warren.
Well, I was just going to ask pretty simply, is there any, as I was reading through this, it didn't seem like there was any downside to the agreement. It seems like we're getting credit for things that MMSD is doing. So in your view, is there any kind of downside to this at all?
I really don't see one. No, I asked that same question. These improvements are going to be constructed and implemented irregardless. It's just the district's recognition after the municipality said, hey, we're paying for these. You don't need the credits because you're not under the TMDL guidance, but the municipalities are. How can we fairly distribute those credits back to the people who are actually paying for the improvement? And this is the result.
Any further questions? If not, we can entertain a motion.
I move that the village board authorize execution of the intergovernmental cooperation agreement between MMSD and the village of Shorewood to recognize joint TMDL and implementation initiatives.
Second.
Any further discussion? If none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. The next item on the agenda is review and provide comment on draft request for proposal 2019-2021 water main relay engineering and inspection. Do I take these all together? Oh, we're not taking a vote. Okay. Also, the 2019-2024 natural turf maintenance and the 2019-2024 Capitol Drive landscape maintenance.
As you'll recall, our last committee of the whole, the board had requested to see draft RFPs prior to issuance. So they're included within your packet, and if there are any questions, our director is here.
Any questions on any of the three? Trustee Menta.
The water main relay, that's Woodburn, right?
The project we've identified for 19 is Woodburn. The 2021 project, we have one in mind, but recall that we use these, I'm calling them off years, to hit areas of highest priority. So we have one outlined, but depending on how the break sequences go over the next year to two, we may revise that if we have a bad winter in a particular place. You may remember that we did that on the Menlo in 2015 when we did Menlo Boulevard. That wasn't anything, that was not slated for that year, but we had 3 to 4 breaks on a block segment that prior winter, so we reprioritized.
Yes.
I have another question too on the Capitol Drive landscape maintenance. Are we currently contracting that out?
Yes, we are.
So what do DPW forces do? Is it just Oakland?
We do all of Oakland. We maintain the planters, the pots on Capitol Drive, and then all the parks and municipal landscape beds. But the Capitol Drive, the median planting beds, and then any planting areas in the right-of-way, including the biofilters, and then the areas around the bridge are maintained by, currently the contract goes to Green Team.
Will this contract cover, for the, I guess it's the median streetscape, will it cover Wilson Drive once open?
Thank you. That was a change that I had made in speaking with Rebecca as we reviewed this, but that change didn't get into your packet. So on the first page of the landscape or the streetscape maintenance RFP, the Wilson areas would be added in the background section. Village of Shorewood maintains approximately 7,500 square feet of medium planting beds. And it'll say in the Capitol Drive corridor, and they'll say, and an additional amount will come online with the Wilson Drive, completion of the Wilson Drive construction, excuse me. So yes, that will be added to this.
Okay, so my question about the RFP was, the irrigation monitoring for brand new installations, I assume is gonna be more hours, like when Wilson comes online. And how are we differentiating, like, are they just gonna budget it in so they know, or did we note that, or?
That is not typically a big, a large amount of hours. It's basically them as they're doing the bed maintenance or the weeding, that heavy, they look and they say, think we got to dial down on the irrigation, or we have to increase the irrigation, we're going to look at it some different hours. It is not a large time consideration, but it's more of a notice that says, you're responsible for maintaining this bed, and part of that is the irrigation. So if you want us to adjust the system, it's your responsibility to tell us that.
I'm just saying that when you look at the RFP, it talks about how often they have to go and do this maintenance. And I'm assuming that they'd have to go and at least look more often as a new, no? Okay. So is there a map? It mentions that you're going to provide a map to the provider?
There will be a map, yes.
Okay. In the future, if there's, it would help me to just see the areas?
Sure.
Okay. And as we're talking and going forward at some point with a template, just to make note, this one didn't, for the water mains, it did not talk about subcontractors, disclosing the subcontractors. It did in the other two, I believe, but this is the one that did not. And I know we had spoken about that before. So if we could make that consistent. Also the term end date, so the one where we're constructing, like water mains, this contract ends at the end, terms out at the end of construction. But for turf and for median, I would assume there's an end date. There's no construction, right?
Right, so the natural turf and then the streetscape are both 3-year contracts.
Yes.
And the water main is a 3-year contract period. However, there are 2 actual design projects within that 3-year period because of how we schedule our main replacement.
So I just think the end term would say 3 years from the date of signature or whatever, for the 2 that, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so just for future, that might help them. And then the last thing, as we move forward, and we don't have to discuss it today, but I would like at some point to discuss selection criteria and that section. And there's nothing about diversity of the team that is applying, and not that we have requirements, but I do think it would make sense as one of the criteria for us to even just, review. And so that's something I'd just like in the future.
What are you asking them to provide in that area?
So for the selection criteria, there's like 10 different standards or whatever, I can't remember what they all are, but to add something like diversity among your team members and subcontractors, or something about the makeup.
And we were asking them to explain that somewhere?
Not for tonight.
Not for tonight, just in the future when we talk about coming up with some kind of template.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody have any other questions? Okay, with that, do we have a motion? We do not have a motion.
There's no way
And
I-
we don't need one. So, okay, we can move on to the next item. Thank you so much, Leanne. So the next item on our agenda is to update on the MMSD Green Solutions Program Neighborhood Outreach and Green Infrastructure Installation Project. Rebecca, do you want to introduce or should we just ask?
Well, I thought Leanne was very great in providing a write-up with regards to this. She's here to answer any other questions that you may have. It's primarily just an update.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Maher.
The 2025 deadline, is all the downspouts have to be disconnected?
In the combined sewer area, so yes, that is a program for the Village of Shorewood and the City of Milwaukee.
Wow.
Trustee Bachhorst. Oh, sorry. Trustee Bachhorst?
Can be a challenge for people, some physical locations.
We've had discussions during the rulemaking process, and there are, you can get variances depending. We'll talk about that in the future, but there's some considerations available.
Trustee Bachhorst.
So with that 2025 requirement of the disconnect in Shorewood, I know in the past we've had partnerships with MMSD to, and other organizations perhaps, for the rain gardens and the, as part of a movement a while back. So this is something that we might want to consider. I mean, I'm sure you're already doing this, forgive me, but the grant necessities that might, or how should I say it? In the past, we've had a lot of grant opportunities because they were available, but just the continued efforts by staff, which I appreciate, to seek these kind of grants in order to help us, or help our residents in this case. So, but and also the environment, of course.
Trustee Mentor.
Yeah, I know there's a kickoff in June, right? At the
Correct.
library. Coming up,
June 16th.
June 16th. What, have you or the village manager talked about a communication plan to get the word out about the requirement in 2025 and the opportunity to have these improvements and rain gardens and whatever?
Yes, but I think that those may be separate issues. I think the communication plan regarding the downspout disconnection program as it relates to the 2025 deadline, I've proposed as an initiative for 19, so if you haven't seen that already, you will. So that will have its own communication plan. This, as I mentioned, this grant is, it's not really being driven by the Village of Shorewood. We were fortunate that the team selected Shorewood as the site to implement the grant, and we've asked for some considerations in terms of participation and how they do that and where and when. Yeah, we will be using our typical, as of now, in this pretty short time frame, channels to get the word out, which would include social media, village manager's memo. There was a blurb in the recent Shorewood Today, because we had enough of a heads up to write something fairly vague that wasn't too specific in terms of dates and details. But it's a very compressed schedule.
Does it have to be installed this summer?
Yes.
It has to be this
Yes.
summer.
And under the terms of the grant, priority goes to properties in the combined sewer area.
I was just going to ask that question, if you don't mind. Who can participate? Because it's a great opportunity. It's a big money saving, and if you looked at the pictures, it's very pretty, and I think a lot of people are going to want it. So who can participate? Do they have to be in the combined sewer area? How many homes can participate in this smart garden, some of these smart gardens, and how will they be selected?
Well, there are limits on, so I believe there's, and I apologize if I did not bring my file, but, so there are there's rain barrel installations, there's rain garden installations, there's lawn turf soil amendment services, and then there's the storm garden installation. So I believe there's 50 rain barrels. I think they're, I'm not going to say a number because I don't recall it off the top of my head.
10 rain gardens.
10 rain gardens.
10 storm gardens.
And then the soil.
20.
So there are hard limits. It will be done, as I understand it, on a first come, first served basis with priority given to combined sewer. So if 55 people sign up for rain barrels and 5 of them are in the separated area, even if they're the first 5 that sign up, it goes to the 50 in the combined area first.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause it's the
That's the point.
Yeah. So that's the structure.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, do we need a motion or? No, we should start it. Okay.
Okay.